The student who silenced a politician. Picture this: a packed university auditorium, a controversial political panel, and one student in the back row who's about to change everything with just a few words. This is the story of Alina Garvey, and what happened that Thursday afternoon in Austin will give you chills. The setup, the University of Texas auditorium, was buzzing with tension, for panelists sat on stage for an event called Public Voices, Politics, Media, and the Power of Narrative. But everyone's eyes were on one person, Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, a name that either inspired admiration or resentment, depending on who you asked. Sitting across from her was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a last-minute addition that had caused quite the stir. The contrast was striking. Bondi with her calculated presence that seemed to take up more space than her actual seat, and Crockett with the steady confidence of someone who'd fought her way through courtrooms and campaign halls. Also on the panel were Dr. Cecil Owens, a sharp Georgetown professor known for his biting takes on political coverage, and Laya Shu, a rising journalist from San Francisco. In the back row sat Alina Garvey. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her roommate had convinced her to come despite being behind on sleep and drowning in coursework. Alina was the type of student who took notes, observed, and kept her head down. She never raised her hand in big rooms. But that was about to change. The spark, the discussion moved to how politicians are portrayed based on their education, background, and speech patterns. It was Jasmine's wheelhouse, and she spoke with the rhythm of someone comfortable in her own skin, not sugarcoating, but never overreaching. Then Pam Bondi made her move. She glanced directly at Jasmine and said with a smirk, "Let's not pretend every representative came out of Yale or Stanford." Some got in with, let's just say, less rigorous paths. A few people chuckled. One person in the back actually laughed out loud. The comment hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Jasmine didn't flinch, but something in the crowd shifted. In the back row, Alina's grip tightened on her chair, because when Bondi said less rigorous paths, it didn't feel like she was just talking about Jasmine anymore. It felt like she was talking about her. The response. Jasmine kept her composure. "I didn't go to Yale," she said evenly, "but I graduated summa cum laude from Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and I've yet to meet a piece of legislation that needed a Harvard stamp to pass." There was scattered applause, more from relief than agreement, but the damage was done. The room had shifted. Dr. Owens leaned forward. "It's always interesting how quickly we discount lived experience when it comes from the wrong neighborhood or the wrong school." Pam smiled politely, but her eyes were narrowing. She didn't like being countered. And then, from the back of the room, came a voice, quiet but firm. "Excuse me." The moment that changed everything. Every head turned. Alina Garvey was standing, holding her notebook like a lifeline, her voice shaking, not from fear, but from the pressure of knowing everyone was watching. "I just want to say," she began, glancing down then back up, steadier now. "For some of us, getting into college at all was the hardest part. We didn't have private tutors. We didn't have parents who went to college before us. So when someone questions the legitimacy of where we studied, they're not just talking about credentials. They're talking about people, about families like mine." Her voice cracked slightly, and the room went dead silent. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't shouting. She was just telling the truth. And truth, when spoken simply and directly, has a way of stopping even the most confident person in their tracks. The floodgates open. But Alina wasn't done. "You said something about certain degrees not being as rigorous," she continued, her voice stronger now. "But I'm not sure you understand what it takes for some of us to even get to the classroom." She looked straight at Bondi. "My mom didn't finish high school. She works nights. My dad doesn't speak much English, but he still makes sure I eat before I go to class. I didn't grow up with test prep books or AP tutors. I studied at laundromats and in back seats. I fought to be here." Gasps rippled through the audience. Dr. Owens leaned back, watching intently. Jasmine's eyes softened. She saw something in Alina, maybe herself. "When you make a joke about someone's school," Alina said, her voice rock-steady now, "and not just talking about where they went, you're talking about how they got there. And for people like me, that journey isn't just a resume line. It's survival. Pam Bondi blinked once, twice. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The room didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt heavy. Real. The ripple effect. Jasmine broke the silence. "What's your name?" "Alina Garvey." "Thank you, Alina." Those 3 words carried the weight of acknowledgement, of validation. But Alina had opened something that couldn't be closed. Other students began standing. A Latina student talked about explaining to her uncle why community college wasn't a shortcut. A guy from the valley shared his story of being first in his family to finish high school. One by one, they stood and spoke their truth. The panel wasn't a panel anymore. It was a reckoning. The aftermath. Professor Wexler, the moderator, finally leaned into her mic. "There's clearly a strong response in the room, and I think we owe it to the students to hear them." Jasmine turned toward Alina. "You started something today. You reminded everyone what courage looks like." Even Pam Bondi, never one to lose control of a narrative, seemed shaken. "I've been in public life a long time," she said finally, her edge gone. "I've dealt with criticism, but I'll admit I didn't expect this. And maybe I needed to hear it." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a crack in the armor. Then Dean Eli Traynor, who'd been quietly observing from the side, stepped forward. "Miss Garvey," he said, "you didn't just speak up. You reminded all of us why we're here. Education isn't about pedigree. It's about people, and courage like yours is a foundation of change." The real victory. As the event ended, students didn't rush out. They stayed, talking in clusters, exchanging stories, making connections. No one reached for their phones to post about it. This wasn't about going viral. It was something deeper. Jasmine approached Alina as the room emptied. "I meant what I said earlier," she told her quietly. "You didn't just speak for yourself. You spoke for hundreds of kids who've been told their stories aren't enough." "I wasn't trying to be brave," Alina replied. "I just couldn't stay quiet." "Brave isn't about wanting to speak," Jasmine said softly. "It's about choosing to when it costs you something." The lasting impact. The next morning, campus felt different. There were no trending hashtags, no breaking news, just quiet conversations in hallways and library corners. Professor Wexler sent an email thanking attendees, ending with, "Some lessons live outside the syllabus. Yesterday was one of them." Weeks later, Dr. Owens invited Alina to work on something bigger. Not an assignment, but a real project worth building conversations around. Jasmine asked to be kept updated about Alina's journey. And Pam Bondi? She left quietly the next morning, as if she knew nothing she could say would rewrite what had already been felt. The truth about courage. Here's what struck me most about this story. Alina didn't set out to be a hero. She was just a student who couldn't stay silent when someone dismissed a struggle she knew intimately. She didn't have talking points or political ambitions. She just had truth. In a world full of calculated sound bites and performative outrage, sometimes the most powerful moment comes from the back row, from someone who wasn't supposed to say anything, from a voice everyone overlooked. Because real courage isn't about having the microphone. It's about standing up when it's hardest, speaking truth when it shakes, and reminding everyone in the room what's possible when one person decides their voice matters. Alina Garvey proved that sometimes the story that changes people the most never goes viral. It just gets remembered. And sometimes that's enough to shift everything.